What kind of man sells his own sister into the snow? And what kind of stranger becomes her only chance to survive? That answer began on a frozen Montana morning when the world looked ready to swallow the living whole. The snow fell heavy across the empty land, thick enough to blur the line between sky and earth. At the edge of a frostbitten cattle yard, a young woman stood shackled to a wagon, her wrists pinched red from rusted iron. Her name was June, only 22, belly swollen with life she had no way to protect. The cold stung her cheeks and cracked her lips, but she said nothing. She had already learned silence was easier than begging. A few feet away, her brother bargained with a rancher who smelled like whiskey and old leather. In one hand, the rancher held a rope. In the other, he held June's fate. "She's healthy," her brother said. "Strong legs. She don't talk much. 7 months, but the baby will come clean." The rancher looked her up and down with hard, dead eyes. "And she don't run." "She won't," her brother replied. "Not anymore." Quote, June stared at the snow beneath her feet. Her breath fogged the air. Inside her belly, the baby shifted, but the next movement was different. A sharp kick rose up under her ribs, fierce and strong, like a warning from the child she still hadn't met. Another kick followed, then another. Not pain, but urgency, as if the baby could sense the danger better than she could. June closed her eyes. "I hear you, baby. I hear you. And I won't let them sell you, too." The rancher tugged the chain. The wagon creaked as he prepared to haul her away. Her brother watched without looking at her, fingers curled around a silver coin he cared more for than the girl who shared his blood. The wind rose, blowing snow across her boots. The world felt too quiet, too small, too final. Then the wagon hit a stump. A sudden jolt, a quick shift. Not much, but enough. June twisted her shoulder hard. The chain snagged on a rail and cracked. The rancher cursed, but she had already dropped into the snow, legs buckling, breath ripped from her chest. Her belly hit the ground first, pain shooting through her side. Still, she scrambled up, running on instinct, running because the child inside her demanded she run. Behind her, voices yelled, boots pounded, snow scattered. But June didn't look back. She pushed through the white world with numb feet and burning lungs. Branches slapped her face. Ice sliced her skin. Blood flecked the ground behind her in small red dots that glowed against pale snow. Her coat was thin. Her breath shivered in broken gasps. She ran anyway, because the heartbeat inside her pulsed fast and strong, almost guiding her. "Run, Mama, run!" So she ran, through pines older than memory, past ridges steep with frozen rock. Her legs trembled, her fingers turned blue. Still, she pressed on. Twilight settled across the land. The sky darkened. The cold grew sharp as broken glass. June stumbled, and her foot slipped. She fell down a small ravine, swallowed halfway into a drift. The cold numbed her limbs. For a moment, she could not even lift her head. Then a tiny bump rolled beneath her skin, a soft kick, a reminder she wasn't alone. "We're still here," she whispered, voice weak. She clawed through the snow, dragging herself inch by inch until she reached level ground again, her eyes blurred with exhaustion. She braced one hand against her belly, the other against a tree. Her legs trembled with every step. Through the trees ahead, a faint light flickered. A cabin or a fire. Maybe shelter, maybe danger. But she had no more choices left. She moved toward it, slow but steady, one breath at a time. Deep inside the woods, Thomas swung his axe into a pine log. The thunk echoed through the trees. He paused and listened. Years living alone had trained him to hear the smallest things. This sound was not the wind. It was a breath, a weak one, and something softer beneath it. He dropped the axe and followed the broken branches and faint marks in the snow. He found her lying in a drift like a fallen bird, one hand curled tight over her belly. Her skin was pale, her lips were blue, The cold had nearly claimed her. She opened her eyes when he knelt beside her. Her voice cracked into the frozen air. "Help." Thomas didn't speak. He studied her, then the tracks leading toward her. Heavy boots, multiple men. They would come looking. He swept branches over the trail to cover her tracks. He kicked snow across the blood drops. He set a small snare near the brush to slow anyone who got too close. Then he bent down and lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. "Frozen to death with a baby," he muttered. "What fool let this happen to you?" He held her close as he carried her through the trees. His cabin was small, hidden deep in a cluster of evergreens. He pushed open the door and brought her inside, laying her on a cot near the cold stove. He stoked the fire, fed it wood, and warmed the room with slow, steady hands. He took off her soaked boots, wrapped her in thick fur, and checked if she could breathe on her own. "I don't take in folks," he said under his breath, "but leaving you out there would be a waste of good snow." The fire glowed bright. Heat filled the space. Color slowly returned to her cheeks. For the first time in years, Thomas Harper lit a fire not for himself, but for someone else. And he did not know it yet. But the moment he lit that flame, nothing about his lonely life would ever be the same. June woke to the soft crackle of fire and the warm scent of pine wood smoke. For the first time in days, the world wasn't spinning with pain. Her eyes opened slowly. She lay on a small cot, covered with thick fur. Her hands curled around a heavy blanket that still held traces of heat. The cabin around her was small and simple, built for survival, not comfort. Every piece of wood in it had earned its place. She pushed herself up, breathing slow. Her belly felt heavy, the baby shifting inside with calm, steady rolls. When she looked around, she saw the little things first. A kettle warming near the stove. A row of tin cups lined neatly on a shelf. A wooden comb placed beside a candle. And a cradle, old but cared for, tucked near the fire where warmth reached the quickest. Her throat tightened. The cradle had been used before. She looked down at her belly and whispered, "We're safe." A moment later the door opened, wind sweeping in before Thomas stepped inside. Snow clung to his boots. His flannel shirt was patched at the elbow. His beard looked rough from days without thought, not laziness. He carried 2 bundles of firewood on his shoulder like they weighed nothing. "You're up," he said. June nodded. "I don't know how to thank you." "I don't do anything to be thanked," he muttered. He stacked the wood beside the stove. "You needed heat." He checked the pot of stew, stirred it once, and added salt. When she reached for a bowl, he stopped her. "Not that one. It's heavy. Use the blue one." His voice was blunt, but not unkind. June blinked at the strange care wrapped inside his rough edges. "You've thought of everything," she whispered. He didn't respond. He never wasted words. While she ate, Thomas moved through the cabin like a man used to silence. He fixed a shutter that rattled in the wind. He added another log to the fire. Even when he wasn't looking at her, he seemed to know when she winced, or when the baby pressed too low, or when she needed more water. June's eyes drifted to the mantel. A small wooden frame sat there, uneven but lovingly carved. Inside was a single name etched in soft loops. "Ellie." She felt her breath catch. "Your daughter?" Thomas froze. Something in his jaw tightened. "Yes." "Is she?" "Gone," he said. "Fire took her." June lowered her gaze. "I'm sorry." He didn't shrug it off. He didn't speak. He just nodded once, like a man who had learned grief was a thing carried quietly. June walked toward the cradle. She traced her fingers along the rim. "This was hers," she whispered. "Yes." Their silence wasn't heavy. It was gentle, like they both understood each other without having to say much. That night, Thomas stood outside chopping wood. June lay on the cot, feeling the baby shift low in her belly. Something about the cabin made her breathe easier. Something about the way Thomas moved reminded her of safety she never knew she could have. But safety didn't stay long. The next day, as June mended a tear in her borrowed shawl, a sound drifted through the trees. Hoofbeats. Slow, patient, searching. June's heart slammed against her ribs. Thomas appeared beside her instantly. No words, no alarm, just action. He guided her to the back of the cabin, pressed a panel loose, a hidden space beneath the pantry. "Inside," he said. "Take the blanket." June crawled in, pressing her knees close to her chest, the baby heavy beneath her ribs. Thomas closed the panel just as the hoofbeats stopped outside. The door creaked open. Cold swept in. A man's voice filled the cabin. Rough, mean. "We're looking for a girl, pregnant, white," ran off. "Someone said she came this way." Thomas's voice was slow and even. "You see a woman out here? She's dead by morning." The man stepped inside farther. June held her breath. "We've been paid to bring her back. Won't take long to look around." "I mind that," Thomas said. "Why? You hiding something?" "You're standing in my house," Thomas replied. "And I don't like visitors." There was a pause, a shuffle of boots. Someone whispered, "He's got an axe." Thomas didn't move, didn't threaten, just existed with a kind of power that needed no sound. Finally, the men stepped back. The door shut. Hoofbeats faded. 10 minutes passed before Thomas opened the panel. June crawled out, shaking, tears burning her eyes. "They'll come back," she whispered. "Yes." "What do we do?" "We leave before the next snow," Thomas said. "I know someone who helped me once." "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Thomas looked at her for a long moment, his face rough, unreadable. But something in his eyes softened just a fraction. "Because fires don't keep themselves lit," he said. "Someone has to tend them." Before dawn the next morning, they packed what little they had. Thomas lifted June into the wagon, wrapped her in furs, and drove into the snowy woods. Hours passed. The sky stayed gray. June held her belly as the child rolled low with the ache of coming soon. She peered out through the wagon flap. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To someone who don't ask questions," Thomas said. "Someone who saved me once." By nightfall, a small stone cottage appeared near a river bend. Smoke curled from its chimney. An old woman waited outside before they even stopped. "You brought the storm with you," she said to Thomas. "And the fire I want to keep lit," he replied. Inside, the woman laid June on a warm cot and checked her belly. "She's close," the woman said. "The child is ready." June's breath shuddered. "Will they find us?" "They will try," the woman said. "But I see guilt in footsteps before they arrive." That night, with wind howling outside, 3 men came to the door, the same kind of men June had run from. The old woman stepped out, unafraid. "She is not here," she said. When they reached for their guns, Thomas stepped into the shadows behind them, axe in hand, shoulders wide, eyes cold enough to still the air. Something in him made them flinch. "Not worth it," one muttered. They left. Inside, June held her belly and whispered to her baby. He stood like a mountain, and they turned like dust. She didn't know it yet, but the storm was only beginning. The wind screamed against the stone walls like a creature mourning something it could never have. Inside the small cottage, firelight danced across the wooden beams while June gripped the edge of the cot, breath breaking into gasps. Sweat rolled down her temples. Her belly tightened again, sharp and deep, pulling a cry from her chest. Thomas stood near her, stiff and pale. His hands shook as he held a basin of warm water. The old woman moved beside them with quiet skill, laying out cloths, checking the baby's position, whispering words that steadied the air. "I don't know how to do this," Thomas muttered. The old woman shot him a stern look. "You keep storms from breaking trees. You keep wolves back with fire and steel. Tonight, you keep her standing." He swallowed hard and nodded. June squeezed her eyes shut as another contraction hit her like a wave. "It hurts," she whispered. Thomas knelt beside her. His voice was low. "Tell me where it hurts." "Everywhere." "Then give it to me," he said. She clung to his shirt, pulling him close as if he was the only anchor she had in a world swinging wild. Her breath crashed. The room blurred. The firelight flickered across Thomas's face. showing fear and strength forced into one. The old woman leaned in. Push. June pushed, teeth clenched so tight her jaw trembled. Thomas held her hand through every second, never letting go, never flinching. Another contraction, another scream, another push. Her body felt like it would tear apart. Thomas pressed a cold cloth to her forehead, whispering, "Stay with me, I'm right here." Then a cry. Not June's, not the wind's. A new cry, sharp and fierce, cutting through the room like sunlight breaking into a storm. The old woman lifted the baby, cleaned her with practiced hands, then wrapped her in soft cloth. "You have a daughter," she whispered. She placed the small, warm bundle against June's chest. June let out a sound that wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite a laugh, something caught between exhaustion and wonder. "She's perfect," she whispered, kissing the baby's forehead. Thomas stood frozen. The light from the fire glowed across his face, catching the shock and awe in his eyes. He didn't move until June reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. "She's here because of you," June said softly. "She's alive because you kept the fire burning." Thomas swallowed hard. For a moment, he couldn't speak. Then he stepped closer and gently touched the baby's tiny fingers. They curled around the tip of his thumb. Something broke open in his chest. Not pain, not grief. Something warm and dangerous that felt like hope. The next morning, when the first thin light touched the snow outside, Thomas carried a piece of pine wood to the fire and began carving. He worked with slow, steady strokes, shaping it into a cradle. He sanded the edges smooth, carved small wildflowers along the side, and finished it before the sun fully rose. June walked in holding the baby, warmth in her tired smile. "You made this?" Quote. "It needed doing," he said quietly. Her eyes softened. "It's beautiful." As days passed, the cottage became a place of peace. June healed slow but steady. The baby slept curled in the cradle Thomas built. The old woman taught June how to soothe fevers and prepare warm tea from dried herbs. Thomas hunted for the house, chopped wood, repaired the door, and built shelves for June's things. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. Everything he did spoke for him. Then, one afternoon, the dogs growled outside. Thomas went still. Boots crunched in the snow. 3 riders approached. June's heart raced. She held her daughter close and stepped back into the shadows. Thomas stepped onto the porch with his axe resting against his shoulder. The lead rider held a bounty paper. "We're looking for a runaway woman. Gave birth recently. Her brother wants her back." Thomas didn't blink. Her brother sold her. "That's not our concern," the man snarled. "She's worth money." Thomas stepped forward. "She's worth more than any of you can carry." The second rider scoffed. "You hiding her?" Thomas's eyes turned cold, darker than winter, steady as stone. "You want her," he said, lifting the axe. "You'll have to go through me." Something in his stance made the men shift uneasy in their saddles. He wasn't loud, he wasn't wild. He was a man who had already lost a child and wouldn't lose another life under his roof. The third man muttered, "Let's go." He ain't bluffing. They turned their horses and rode off, the snow swallowing their tracks. When silence settled, June stepped out, holding the baby close. Thomas lowered the axe slowly. She walked toward him, eyes full. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. He looked away, voice low. "Yes, I did." June touched his arm gently. "Why?" He turned back to her, the truth rising in his eyes like dawn across frozen land. "Because you're home," he said. Her breath caught. She stepped closer, the baby warm between them. "And you are ours." Spring melted the last of the snow. Thomas expanded the cabin with fresh timber, building a bigger hearth, a new window for sunlight, and a sturdy table he carved by hand. June dried herbs by the fire, hummed soft songs to the baby, and filled the cabin with warmth that Thomas didn't know he missed until she brought it back. They went to the village festival that year. June spoke by the fire, telling her story with simple honesty. People listened. Thomas stood behind her, the baby resting against his chest in a tiny woven sling. When the night ended, June whispered, "Thank you for saving me." Thomas shook his head. "You're the one who saved this place." She smiled. "No, We saved each other. That night, back home, Thomas placed the baby into her cradle. He lingered, brushing, one small fingertip curled like a bud. June watched from the doorway. The fire lit Thomas's face with soft gold, and for the first time he looked peaceful. June walked to him and slipped her hand into his. The fire cracked. Snow began to fall outside, gentle and slow. Inside, there was warmth, a family, and a life built not from promises, but from quiet choices made in the coldest season. A lonely lumberjack had taken in a pregnant girl sold by blood. What he found was more than a home. He found a family.